Welcome everyone. I don't want everyone here to think this is only an introductory chess video. We will review the basic queen checkmate just so everyone is caught up, but primarily this video is going to be focusing on how we can pre-move this checkmate very quickly and efficiently. We'll also go over a few stalemate tricks that this player wants to avoid, and we'll even include one stalemate trick that I haven't seen talked about too many places, so for that I'll call this kind of like a secret stalemate. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing here is this queen checkmate. This is the very quick review version for those who don't know this checkmate. The idea is basically something called the box method, where essentially we'll try and box this enemy king into a smaller and smaller area that it can escape to, and once we limit its escape squares, we'll eventually be able to deliver checkmate. Now, the fastest way to do this is just simply keep advancing our king up the board, and we'll keep pushing the king to either the edge of the board or one of the corners. Now, a more advanced version of this is you can also start with bringing the queen more or less behind the king and then kind of flushing the king out more towards us. And the idea with that is it takes less moves than our king to push up the board. But for simplicity's sake, let's just stick with going up the board and keep it straightforward. So here, black is trying to avoid this. And so we'll play queen d3. Again, we're just pushing the king up the board here. And this is a good time to mention this box that I'm referring to. So this box method is referring to all the squares that this queen controls. And our king also helps, but specifically, this king cannot go through check. And so we'll notice that this king can never go to a square like b6 because our queen is in the way. It can never go to a square like g2 because our queen blocks it off. And so the problem here is for black, they can never escape to all of this other parts of the chessboard. They're only limited to this small box, and as long as we keep pushing their king further and further to the edge of the board, they're going to be stuck in this box and have no way to make progress. So we'll just keep advancing. And the best way to make this box smaller and smaller is to have the queen, what I like to call a knight's jump away from the king. And it's just a really good way because it controls these squares and it sort of pushes the king towards the direction, in this case more towards this corner. But once the king gets to a corner or the edge of the board, you're able to deliver checkmate. So here the king will keep trying to survive, but again notice that this box is getting smaller than it once was. And as long as we keep making this box smaller and smaller and we avoid stalemate, we should be able to easily win this. So we'll keep advancing our king. They keep trying to survive. We'll push our queen up further again. Now our king is controlling some key squares, so now the king is boxed in. And again, their box is very small. Since the king is defending these squares, really the black king has to go to one of these 8 squares. So they went down from a board of 64 down to only 8. And this will keep getting smaller and smaller until there's checkmate. So the king comes down here, we advance our king, and then they can go back. And here's the first stalemate that we must avoid. So a common stalemate is if we were to play king f6. If we were to play king f6 here, I'll play just to put it on the board. You'll notice that whenever the queen and king is in this configuration with the enemy king, this is a stalemate, and so black will of course try to play this if they're able to. Because all these squares are controlled and the black king is not in check, this would be a draw and this should be avoided. So the easy way to avoid this is, again, a knight's jump away. We'll just put the queen on c7, and now the king, this box is very small. The square is controlled by the queen, this is controlled by the queen. All of these here, the defending king is stuck to only those 4 squares, e8, f8, g8, and h8. And so the box is getting very small. And so now, once it's super small, we just simply advance the king and we'll deliver checkmate. Now the second stalemate to avoid is if we didn't advance the king. So let's just say that hypothetically, after a move like this, king f8, let's say that we keep using the queen. It's best to advance our king, but let's say that we just keep this knight's distance away. We still haven't blown the game, but if we keep doing this without being too careful, we'll get into this common stalemate, where yes, there are knights jump away, but the queen controls all these squares, and the black king has no legal moves. This is stalemate. And so all you have to do to avoid this is simply advance your king. And so if we advance our king, now wherever they move, they're going to get checkmated in one move here. So if they go to e8, there's queen e7 checkmate. Queen c8 is also a nice checkmate. And of course, if they go to g8, then queen g7 is checkmate. But this is like your basic review. This is just in general, the box method, how you corral the enemy king and how you deliver checkmate. But again, for this video, we're focusing more on how we can do this very efficiently, not necessarily the most optimal way, but just simply how to do it quickest, if you're under time pressure especially. And so the way that you do this here is it's the same method where you still want to be pushing the enemy king to the edge of the board or a corner and eventually checkmate. But especially in speed chess, the key squares to keep in mind are these squares here. So this would be c3, c6, f3, and f6. And these squares are the squares that the attacking side usually wants to place their king. And then from there, it's very easy to deliver checkmate. So okay, so that's the start of this, and we'll get to I'll actually play it. I'll play against the computer, and we'll try and get a quick stalemate. We'll try and avoid stalemate. Try and get a quick checkmate here. But before we do that, let's get to the other secret stalemate that we want to avoid. So here's a position where we have two queens. So this stalemate comes up with two queens, not one. But it's an interesting stalemate that is fairly common, especially at the higher levels. But it's really not talked about almost ever. And so it's almost like a secret stalemate. It's kind of what I call this. If I had to name it, I would probably say maybe stutterstep checkmate. And the reason why I call it that is I've never seen this talked about anywhere as far as like YouTube or any other main platforms. But I do remember years ago, I did see something where I think it was Grandmaster Amon Hambleton, and he was describing this, and he called this a stutterstep. And so we'll get to it and we'll show what we're talking about here. So in honor of him, I'll call it this stutter step that we're looking at here. So normally we just want to keep this kind of ladder thing going and deliver checkmate. And, the defending king is nowhere to go. It looks pretty simple. It looks like the most normal position in the world. And what could go wrong? Well, the thing is, they go king e2, we go here, and you'll notice that if we just keep pre-moving very quickly, if we're under time pressure especially, after king d1, a huge blunder would be to fall into this very common stalemate. If we were to advance our queen, it looks like we're about to get this ladder for checkmate, but this is actually stalemate because the queens control all these squares around the king, and the king has no escape. So if you're able to get this, especially under time pressure when some people promote multiple queens, this is a very easy stalemate, that you can try and set up. But the way to avoid this is if you're the attacking side and you want to keep pre-moving. Whenever you get to the third rank or file here, there's a little stutter step where instead of keep going down this way, we'll kind of take like one extra move and we'll do this little stutter here. And in this case, queen b to b3 check is going to be our little stutter step. The king will move, and then we continue the ladder, and that's going to be checkmate. And if the king was further away, so if this wasn't check, say that, the king went over to a different square, then it's simply going to be one wasted move, but it's going to have no consequence because then we'll just take one move longer and we'll still deliver the checkmate. So it's just a little precaution that you can use. So if it was, pre-moving really quickly, what you would want to do is this instead of queen b2, this little stutter, and then complete the ladder checkmate. So this is the stalemate trick that you need to avoid with two queens. And if you're the attacking side, you can try that little stutter step when you're on the third rank or file. So back to the actual position here. Go back to the original queen checkmate with one queen on the board. So remember I said the key squares were c3, c6, f3, and f6. And so we want to get our king to one of these squares. And let's say we get our king to f6. So the reason these squares are important is because you can pre-move very quickly, getting the queen to either the 7th rank and then delivering checkmate this way if the king is somewhere on this corner. Or you can very quickly go the other way, and then say the king is boxed over this way. We can go something like this, and this will also be a checkmate with our king on f6. And so basically the king is very flexible from these squares, and the queen can swing around very quickly to deliver checkmate. So I'm going to try this with the computer, and the computer may or may not lag. I don't know how much it'll go with this here, because sometimes it doesn't show pre-moves too much. So I just put this on the maximum computer, and let's see if I can do this fairly quickly under time pressure, even though I haven't played Bullet or Blitz in a while. So, alright, so let's see if we can get this checkmate fairly quickly. Okay, so that was fairly quickly there. And unfortunately, there's no way I can really have a clock. But this is the key idea, It's very quick and easy once you practice it. All I did here was I just got the king to f6, and then I just swung the queen over. Did this kind of queen to c7, keep the king boxed in, this small little box here. The square was controlled, the king was only limited to these squares. And then we eventually just we advanced our king, and then we just delivered a very quick checkmate. And so I hope this little video helps. It's a little shorter than others, but it's it's useful. And so I hope that the length isn't as important as the information that we have here. So I hope everyone can not only play their queen checkmates very well, but to be able to pre-move them very quickly. And I wish you the best of luck in your games. I'll talk to you all later in the next video, and I'll see you later.